Oh my God.
It's on. Welcome, Lab. I'm Carlos Maza.
Nope. Already getting it wrong.
Okay. Let's, hi. Welcome. Okay. We're going to do some questions here with Carlos from Strikethrough. I'm Coleman. I guess we should look here, not at the TV.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. I have a question to start off with. What gives you the right? Who do you think you are?
Already going off the rails. It's going to get cut early. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining the Q&A.
All right, this is my show right now.
Okay, sorry.
I'm hosting. So I actually want to start with a D&D question. There's a lot of Strikethrough questions, and we'll get to that.
No Strikethrough, all D&D.
But from Austin, who says, I love your work, but I could not make it. How long have you been playing D&D? And do you plan on making any more content about D&D?
Great question, Austin. I actually have never played myself as a D&D hero in a campaign. I've only ever been a dungeon master. People who join this for Strikethrough are like, I already hate it. But,
get to the politics.
I had an ex-boyfriend in DC who played D&D, and he told me about it, and I thought it sounded cool. And then I started listening to a podcast called Drunks and Dragons, where people play D&D with their friends when they're blackout, which was really funny. And then I basically learned the rules through listening to the podcast. And then I went to Bird, who's one of our coworkers who's in DC, and at a happy hour and said, I'm listening to this podcast. I'm really sad that I never got to play D&D. And she was like, I've been listening to a podcast and I never got to play. So I convinced Bird, Coleman, and a couple of my other friends in DC to just start a campaign with me because I already knew the rules. And we ended up playing for a year and a half, and it was unbelievable. I loved every second of it. And then we had to end the campaign because I moved here. And then I restarted a new campaign here in New York a couple of weeks ago. So it's just starting now. But yeah, I've been playing and been DMing for 2 campaigns. I've never been a hero. I've done like one-offs with some people, and I loved it. But I've never gotten to make a hero that's all mine. And then other D&D content, I so wish I could only make videos about D&D, and I would happily make a Strikethrough series or a Vox series that was just Dungeons and Dragons. But the Republic is on fire. So once that's over and everything's back to normal, it was so fun.
That was a good one.
Yeah. And now I get like emails from D&D being like, here's a new expansion. And I'm like, I can't. The Republic's on fire.
That video is on the DungeonsandDragons.com homepage.
True. Also, if you go to dnd.com and look at like D&D Explained or like about the game, our idiot faces are on there. And it's like one of the cooler things I've ever done at Vox. It's the only video I've ever published where the response was almost universally positive, and nobody called me a soy boy after that. So I miss that period very much.
I want to still get into Strikethrough in a bit, but from John Fallett, who is here.
Hi, John.
He sent in earlier, which of the queens are you rooting for in season 11 of RuPaul's Drag Race? And personally, rooting for Sugarcane.
Okay, well, who are you rooting for?
I don't Rue? No, I don't watch TV.
Okay, so I actually am rooting for Sugarcane because she's the kind of drag queen who you can tell that if nobody came to her show, she would still do the same number and be just as happy. And I love any drag queen that is like that joyous about the art of drag. My other is Evie Oddly, who's like a very cerebral New York queen who just seems very smart and conceptual. And I love like nerds who become fierce queens. So Evie and Sugar are my 2 top picks. And then I have a lot of bottoms that I won't talk about right now. If I had a nickel for every time. Grow up.
Anyway, from I'm gonna get this name wrong. I'm sorry. Kushbu Jodia. Hey Carlos, love your videos. What do you think about all the comments stating that you have a left-wing bias, and has that ever changed your perspective on things, or made you change the way you present things?
Great question.
Pretty obviously have a left-wing bias.
How dare you?
Strikethrough is such a tame version of Carlos. He's full on just, you're a communist.
Yeah, if you get me riled up at a bar, I will be like, I'll have much more extreme views. Yeah, I have a very clear progressive bias in all the work that I do. I am a progressive and think progressivism is a good idea and that will make the country better. Strikethrough is obviously an editorial series. It's like not just research driven. It's also like how I think you should think about things and stuff like that. So my feelings about the comments, my answer to those comments is doy hickey, no duh. And I feel like I make a lot of jokes in my videos about how like I am an Antifa super soldier and like a lefty hippie. And I make those jokes not to discredit my arguments or to trivialize concerns about bias, but to show that a journalist can have all journalists have a point of view and a view of the world and certain sets of values and judgments and ideas that shape and guide their work. There's no such thing as a journalist with no bias. That's just, you're talking about a computer. All humans have tons of biases, and we make a bunch of editorial decisions when we produce anything that reflect our worldview and viewpoint. If I was writing a story about like a baker who refused service to a gay couple, there's no way I could write about that and it not reflect my experiences as a gay person who has to worry about discrimination. So I would say, duh. Hopefully my arguments are good enough and tight enough that you are still persuaded despite my left-wing bias. And I think actually one of the things that I like about making jokes about being an Antifa super soldier is that I feel like if I'm pretending to be totally neutral and you're an audience member who doesn't agree with me, you'll smell that I have a bias, and then you'll shut down because you'll be like, oh, he has a bias, it's over. And if I just incorporate it to be a part of my storytelling, my hope is that you'll be like, all right, that's like already out in the open, and now we can actually consider this argument as good. Yeah,
pushback.
Yeah. Like it kind of disarms the opponent of this like knee-jerk feeling that any bias is disqualifying, because it's not. And if you only listen to journalism or listen to any kind of commentary that is free of bias, you're going to end up getting zero useful information about the world, because any human who does journalism is essentially a storyteller who takes themselves very, very seriously. And how you tell a story always reflects the biases and worldviews and values and experiences of the author. So yes, I have a bias. So does everyone else. Anyone who in journalism who says they have no bias and is totally immune to having their editorial viewpoint shape their writing is lying and spent too much time in J school. Oh God, I'm getting hyped up.
Yeah,
I'm getting too aggressive.
So actually, no,
we should dismantle the state.
Tian wants me to read one of these, but I want to just do a quick follow up, which is about the jokes, and it's such a great way of disarming the most obvious like criticism to the video, which would hopefully like encourage more critical thinking. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about how you sort of develop that method of like, because I know when you're writing, you think about like every single angle of what the most possible tangible counter argument is. Do you want to talk about your debate background, or how you use the jokes as a defense mechanism, which you developed after years of being viciously bullied?
Cut the feed. Can we cut the feed?
Okay, let's roll back to the beginning. It's 5 o'clock.
Those are actually great questions. Coleman's right. I spend every nanosecond of preparing a Strikethrough video agonizing about what the best response to it is, and if I'm missing the best response, which is why it takes me forever to write Strikethrough, and also why my editors almost hate like editing my stuff, because I'm an incredibly anxious person. And also, if you say something dumb on the internet, especially about politics, you say something dumb on the internet forever and you never live it down. So it's like very stressful to do it. It's also good practice to imagine what your opponent's best argument is and try to respond to it in your writing. It's like a good debate practice, like just anticipate what their best response is and write around it, like anticipate it. So I try to do that anyway. One of the arguments that I always get is like you're biased and you have a point of view and stuff like that. So I just have made that a part of my writing. The other part that Coleman alluded to is like, I've spent a lot of my adult life and also my teenage life getting very negative responses to arguments that I make, both in debate and on the internet. Also, Coleman a lot of times does not, I think, agree with some of the arguments I make on Strikethrough, or is like not easily persuaded by we have very different maybe not very different, but we have very different approaches to politics.
I'm not as far left as you are.
Yeah, he's not as far left as I am. So even in like actually recording on camera, there'll be times where I deliver a line and Coleman's like, or like this happened a lot when we started at Vox, where I'm writing a script and I'll like ask him to walk outside with me and like basically pitch my argument with him and see how he reacts to it. So like anticipating the response of people who don't agree with me is a big part of my process. It hasn't changed my point of view. Like every time I publish a Strikethrough video, it's because at some point before we publish it, I was like, damn right, this is a good argument and I'm 100% right about this. But usually getting to that point requires a lot of me trying to anticipate what my weakest point is. And a lot of times that comes from Coleman being like, that doesn't make any sense, and me having to revisit and like reconsider what my argument is, or just try to pitch it in a way that gets around that anxiety.
Yep. Okay, so we have a question from Philip TC from Madrid. I love this channel and especially Strikethrough, which brings me to my first question. Why Strikethrough?
Oh my God. Good question. We actually went back and forth for a long time on what the title of this show should be. And actually, when we first got hired, it was me, Coleman, Joss, and I think Joe were going back and forth for a long time. There was like a long list of, I wish I had the list with me now. A long list of potential names for Strikethrough.
Ooh, Looking Glass?
Some of them were really bad. One of them was Compass, like
Compass.
to help you navigate the political waters we're in.
This is before Borders was a thing, though.
Yeah, before, was it?
Vox Docs was what Johnny was doing.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of them sounded like different names for what Johnny was doing, so we had to like keep changing it. Was Atlas around back then?
Nope, Atlas wasn't around.
Man, we could have taken Atlas.
We
should have taken Atlas and Borders for ourselves. Yeah, I don't know. There are a couple other really, really bad ones. The reason we stuck on Strikethrough, Vox Clean Copy.
Detox was
Detox.
one. I wanted Detox. I was voting for that.
Because they don't know that Detox is the name of a famous drag queen. It's straight people thinking this is a good idea. Second Edit was a good one.
Strikethrough was
Second Drag. Oh my god, if I was a drag queen, it should be called Strikethrough. The reason we picked Strikethrough is because we had the idea that was in our heads was like, basically if you were going through and re-editing newscasts and trying to like cut the bad shit out of it, you would strike through all this bad text in the script. So it's that idea of like a second edit or clean copy of like we're revising what's already been put to air or looking at it again, criticizing it and being basically a red pen. So Strikethrough is what we decided on. It sounds so obvious now, but when we were starting, I was like, Vox Detox, Vox Antidote was one of them.
Antidote.
Really, really, but these are all terrible names. There's no good name, a snappy name for a show that's like someone being upset about CNN. There's just no sexy way to put that. Freaking Reliable Sources would have been a great name, but Brian Stelter already has it. Newsbroke would have been a great name, but AJ Plus already had it.
Newsbroke started happening like a month before.
Yeah.
Strikethrough.
Newsbroke is such a good name for a show like this.
It's available now.
It's a rest in peace, Newsbroke. But it's already too late. Now Strikethrough's a thing. I have a back tattoo that says Strikethrough, so it's too late to change.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay, Michael Puckett.
So
Carlos question. I always respected friends who did speech and debate in college. What kinds of things did you learn that help you now? And was some of it pressure from competitive peers?
Great question, Michael. Debate is the best thing I've ever done. It's like the only reason I have this job. It's the only reason that I got a job after I graduated. I don't remember a goddamn thing I learned in college or high school, but I remember a bunch of stuff I did in debate.
Very weak at math.
I'm terrible at math. You make a good half point. Thank you for laughing at that.
It was bad.
So to answer your question, a lot of things I learned from debate. One of them is how to talk too quickly so no one understands you, which is a recurring problem that I have even in my daily life. As you can probably tell, I talk way too quickly, and that's a bad debate habit. Stuff that's helped me a lot, understanding how to build a coherent argument that follows a thesis. I'm still bad at this often. I mean, anyone who makes arguments struggles with this, but building an argument in a way that there's like a supporting thesis, a claim, a warrant for the claim, and evidence that supports the warrant is like stuff that you learn in Debate 101. Anticipating your opponent's best argument and writing around that is Debate 101. There's a really nerdy tactic. If anyone in the chat is an actual debater, you'll know what I'm talking about. But there's this practice in debate called embedded clash, which is like, instead of responding directly to your opponent's argument, make your argument in a way that includes a response to it without them knowing it. It's like a way to save time when you're debating is instead of saying, they said this, my response is this, just say, I say this and have all your responses built in there. They're all like debate tricks to become more efficient. I feel like I'm talking so quickly right now. They're all just ways to be more efficient because when you debate, you have a timer. And if you don't make an argument within the time limit, you're done, son. So you speak so efficiently. So that stuff helped. It made me a really good researcher. It made me experience with a lot of like critical theory stuff that I wasn't getting in college and high school. Like so many of my videos that I've made, I look back at them now and I'm like, I used to make these arguments in debate. Like I did this when debate rounds and I'm just using it now. And then the other broader thing, which is like being confident, making an argument that's editorial and doing it in a way that feels warm and disarming. Like I feel like when I was a freshman in debate, I thought the way to win was to be like a total prick and be so mean and condescending. And the more you debate, the more you realize that actually if you're funny and warm and vulnerable and don't take yourself too seriously, it's really endearing. And I feel like that's the style of Strikethrough. It's like why I make the jokes that are self-deprecating, because like people would rather listen to someone who's not a condescending prick. And also like in our, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like in our normal interactions, I don't actually feel that confident about my arguments usually. And so it'd be really weird if when the camera was on, I was like, welcome to the authoritative answer to everything. And I was like a total dick because it's just not my personality. And also you would roast the shit out of me if I tried to do that on camera.
Yeah, I would have no patience for that. Matt Ferda, question for y'all. I know it's early in the race, but how do you feel about the current collection of 2020 presidential candidates?
Matt, I want it to be over. I don't want to talk about
it. I'm already drained.
The weird thing is I am someone who loves political theory and like obviously my series is all about politics. I hate electoral politics. And one of the worst parts about living in DC is that I go on dates with guys who'd want to be like, what do you think of, I don't know, X idiot's ground game in Virginia? And I'd be like, I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't know what's going on. I don't know who's going to win. I don't know who's a better campaign platform. Anyone who says they know is probably guessing. There are so many idiots on the internet who are just predicting what's going to happen with no information, and I would rather not do it. So my feeling so far is there's a bunch of them. I'm overwhelmed. I'm glad that there are a lot of candidates, and I think it's a really good example of the Overton window moving, because there's stuff in this primary that like would have seemed bonkers in 2016, and now it's like, yeah, Medicare for all, let's do this thing. It's just cool to watch like progressive politics shift. But in terms of predictions or candidates, I don't know. I want my feeling is I want to die.
Next question. Karan wants to know, what's the story behind your left arm tattoo? And I was going to ask that also.
Oh, okay. I have a great question. I have a couple of them. It's some of them are like weirdly personal. I'll give you the first date version of it. So the first two I got were on my wrists. All of my tattoos on my left arm are about reminders about how to treat myself, and the ones on my right arm are how to treat other people. I only have one on my right arm, which shows I'm a total narcissist. But the ones I got these actually right after I got. Is that right? Right after I got my Vox job.
Yep.
Yeah, right after I got the Vox job.
You got the piercings right after. I mean, it all changed.
No, the piercings when I was still at Media Matters.
Oh. Yeah.
But for a similar reason, the reason I got them, because prior to doing on-camera work, I had nothing like tattoos or piercings, is because one of the dangers of doing on-camera work, this will be very real, but one of the dangers is that you become a total fucking narcissist. Like it's really addictive to like have people seeing you and recognizing you and thinking your whole identity becomes like this person you present on camera, and like your identity becomes a product essentially for a company that you don't own. And so the tattoos and the earrings are ways for me to like assert some dominance over my own body and be like, it's still mine. I get to decide what goes on it. And like, just because I'm on camera does not mean that I belong to any of my employers, like that they get to tell me what to look like and stuff like that. No one ever really told me to. It's just like my knee-jerk reaction to that kind of thing. The tattoo on my left wrist is a pause sign. And it's from this concept in like spiritual teaching and also like therapy about a thing called the sacred pause, which is when you have a negative emotion, I feel like you're going to lash out to someone, at someone, just stop and be like, what's happening right now? Like, am I okay? What am I freaked out about? And it's like a really good way to not be destructive towards other people. This tattoo is like an homage to the idea that some things in life are just for you to understand, and that even people who love you and care about you don't need to know every single thing about you. And that's not a sign of failure. It's just like part of the human condition is being lonely, and that there's actually something kind of beautiful about stuff that's just yours. And the top one, I was trying to get this armband flipped way higher up on my arm, and I booked my appointment and went in, and I had booked 3 hours and paid a ton of money. And she was like, we can't do it that high because your tricep and bicep will distort the line. You can't do a straight line thing.
You're too jacked, basically.
And you're too friggin' jacked to get this tattoo, kid. And I was like, oh damn, not again. So I'd already booked it, and I was like, I still want a tattoo on my arm. I think armbands are cool. So I was like, I'll just make up a design on the fly. I've always been obsessed with the number 4. So I got 4 lines with dots in them that are not lined up with each other. And if anyone asks, it's like, it's an ode to chaos and disorder and going with the flow. But really, I'd already booked all that time, and I just wanted an arm tattoo, so I just got it.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Okay. David O'Brien. Hey, question. How many people are creatively involved with a typical episode of Strikethrough?
Good question, David. So I pitch an idea to my story editor, who is now is an incredible editor named Liz here. Liz Sheltons, who makes some of her own videos and is really like genius. She'll greenlight the pitch that she thinks is a good idea. Then I'll research and write it. I now have someone who works here named Maddie, who helps me edit the videos, who also now helps me with researching. So I'll tell Maddie, like, I need clips about this awful thing. So she'll help me with that. Sometimes I'll ask another employee here, Alayli, to help if I need like a ton of clips and don't have the time to find it all. So they'll find me clips. Liz will approve the script and like make edits to it. Then Coleman and I will shoot. And even though when I started here, Coleman and I he was like editing Strikethrough with me. And so we were like making it together. He now is doing
and at our old job. We started
at our old job,
this, just the two of us. I mean, he was writing and everything and on camera, obviously. But yeah, I would shoot and edit everything. And there was no one else involved.
Yeah.
We didn't have an editor.
No. Matters. But now we do. So Coleman used to edit, but now he just shoots me. And the reason that we do that is because I'm way more comfortable on camera when Coleman is behind the camera. Both because he gives me like a bunch of positive feedback. He lets me try out jokes that do or don't work. He's really funny at like the off-camera aside stuff, and we've worked together for a long time. So I would rather shoot it with him because I feel like more in my element. And then after that, Maddie and I will work. I do some of the editing, though I'm not a very good editor. So Maddie does like all the really heavy lifting stuff, and then Liz will go through it. We have Dion who does some of the art directing, who I'm sure everyone here knows, who will give us like visual notes. The main makers of it are me and Maddie, with Liz overseeing, and then like DM will jump in and give some visual feedback. Coleman helps with the shooting, and then some other people depending on how heavy it is. But it's mainly just like it's a tight group.
Yeah. Philippe again. How do you interpret the demagogical conservatism? Nice, someone's university educated, and left populism that's been spawning around the world in the last 5+ years. Are you worried about where the world might be heading? The last part I can answer for you. You're terrified of the way the world is. I'm
terrified of where the world is heading, which is why I make this series. Great question. I'm probably not equipped to answer it because my expertise is like extremely limited to media stuff, and even then, using expertise is like a very generous way of describing it. I think it is super scary that there are like all these populist movements now. I think populism can be good or bad. It can be harnessed in good or bad ways. I think like leftist populism, in the way we're seeing in the Democratic primary now, is like a good development. I think populism that leans towards authoritarianism is really scary. I'm an idiot about this stuff. If you ask me at a bar, I'm never at a bar, but if you ask me at a bar why I think this is happening, I think it's because like globalization is really destabilizing, and we haven't been very good at like grappling with the way it destabilizes both economies and like local communities, and how it makes people feel alienated. I think global capitalism makes people feel really alienated, and so populism gives people a sense of community that they can attach to. But there are people who are way smarter than me who will give you a more interesting answer based on data, as opposed to me, this is just coming from like when I lie in bed at night being like, oh, why is everything on fire? And this is like my best guess about why that's happening. But I don't know. It's big. It's bigger than, it's above my pay grade. What the hell's so funny about that?
I don't know. Sebastian, how do you handle post-release anxiety?
Great question, Sebastian.
Oh God, never mind. Could have made such a good joke there, but not for the stream.
Post-release anxiety. I don't handle it well. I usually check we joke that like the day after you publish is a burn day, because you just spend the entire day reading the comments and looking at your Twitter mentions, and just having anxiety and nitpicking over everything you've done wrong. I normally have to like log off and either get excited about whatever I'm pitching next, or just play a bunch of video games to turn my brain off. Publishing on the internet, especially when it's like your opinion and it feels like your baby, is a freaking nightmare. I would not recommend it to anybody. It is the worst. All of your worst insecurities about yourself will be triggered. So post-publish, it's like, try to read the comments as little as possible, fail, read all of the comments, become obsessed with the 3 negative comments, hate yourself in the mirror, and then like 3,000 negative comments, and then like go for a run, call your mom, eat garbage food, and then like invite Coleman over to play video games, and then get ready for the next one.
That reminds me, Viv, Carlos's mom, if you're watching, please accept my Instagram request. I've requested you like 3 times.
Wow.
It's making me feel pathetic.
Wow.
Now you know, Lab. Carlos Torres, Coleman, you were based in Mexico City a few years ago. How long were you there, and what were you doing? Hey, we're friends on Facebook. What's up? I was, and you were, and I think you just moved to China or something, so congrats.
Do you guys want a room or something? What's going on right now?
I was there for about a year, and I was working for a small production company, shooting and editing, mostly editing, and then also making some short films, some like mini documentaries about just different people around the city and around Mexico in general. But yeah, I was working for a production company. Thanks for asking me a question.
He brings it up all the time. If you hang out with Coleman, you will not be able to go 5 seconds without him being like,
I talk about,
when I lived in Mexico, he's like it's very annoying. He's got big study abroad vibes.
No, it's not like that.
No, it's kind of like that.
It's not like that.
Kind of like that.
It was a very transformative year. I was 23 and I'd never lived outside of the country, and it was a big deal for me. And I was gonna wear a shirt from Mexico today, so I'm really glad I didn't, because that would just be so embarrassing.
Anytime we get tacos, these aren't authentic tacos.
I don't
That's not how they do it in Mexico.
I don't do that.
Very annoying.
I don't do that. But they really are better down there. Evo says, have you thought about collaborating with other YouTube channels like Kyrgyzstan, Vsauce?
You got this.
There, keep going. This is a big spelling test with all you people, isn't it? Veritasium, Mark Rober, and so many more.
Good question, Evo. We've thought about it, though not with those particular YouTubers. The YouTuber that I would love to collaborate with, if there was ever a reason for it, is nope. Hard pass.
Big follower.
Is Natalie Wynn, who's known as ContraPoints on YouTube. I'm obsessed with her, with everything about her, and you can probably tell that a lot of Contra has slipped into Strikethrough with the little silly skits and stuff. I just think that she is a freaking master of, as she would describe it, pageantry and storytelling and long form arguments, and just brilliant. I don't know if there's ever a reason for us to collaborate because she does her own thing and she already plays multiple characters in her own videos, so there's no need to have a foil. She's a great foil to herself. And I wouldn't want to interfere with her creative control. I think what I'm trying to say is I want to meet her and and tell her how great she is, and that's what I'd want to do for a collab. But yeah, I haven't thought about collabing in a much bigger sense. I'm also Coleman can tell you, can be kind of a nightmare to work with.
Absolutely.
I love having
editorial control. I would love to
talk
about that, actually. Should we talk about that now?
I think we just cut the tape. I love having editorial control. And very protective of my arguments.
Very.
And so it might be tough to collaborate with me because I'm extremely stubborn about the stuff that I make.
Volatile is a word I've thought about.
Is there another question you want to ask?
Let's see. Question. Modern political discussion tends to focus on direct confrontation. What do you think would support a more civilized conversation?
Great question.
Passive aggressiveness.
I don't know. This is a big question. I'll say I think a ton. I get a bunch of people in my mentions all the time asking me to debate right wing pundits like Steven Crowder or Ben Shapiro. And as a former debate nerd, I think there's a lot of value in the process of civil debate and discourse and well organized debate. I don't see it anywhere in American public discourse, and I don't know if it's possible for two reasons. One is I think a lot of the leading voices, especially in the right, are acting in bad faith and are not genuinely interested in finding middle ground. Ben Shapiro had that clip that was floating around about him saying the only reason to debate a leftist is to embarrass them. I think that is genuinely true for a lot of right-wing pundits who have been incentivized for a lot of reasons to become just jerks, basically, and to treat their opponents as jokes and to not engage seriously in the arguments that their opponents are making. So I think that's kind of a dead end in one way. And the other way is real good debate, actually productive debate, is actually very hard to pull off. It requires a judge who can moderate really well. It requires a lot of time. It requires evidence so that people aren't just using their opinions and stuff. Time to look at the evidence and assess it and judge it. And it requires an audience that's genuinely open to hearing new perspectives and isn't locked in a tribalist mindset. I don't know if that can happen. And my other anxiety is that sometimes airing bad arguments just to defeat them makes them more popular. It's why I don't think we should debate climate change or vaccines, because even having the debate, even if you crush the other person, giving them a platform makes things worse. So I kind of subscribe to the contra view of politics, which is both sides are just putting on their own pageants, and we should try to put on our best freaking pageant and make the best argument in defense of our worldview and not worry about getting in the mud, because I actually don't think a lot of people are persuaded by getting in the mud. And it kills me to say that, because as a bleeding heart liberal, I'm and then an enlightenment person, I'm with some rational discourse and hearing each other's opinions, we can find real truth. But I don't think that's true. I think we all have lizard brains, and I just hope that people who have the best interest of the public at heart can use their lizard brains to put on a better show than the other side. Sorry.
I want to issue a correction, because I saw Carlos Torres came back and said that we are not friends on Facebook and we don't know each other. Sorry to
Hell yeah,
you.
Carlos Torres, MVP.
I thought you were someone else. I don't know how you knew I lived in Mexico City then.
I knew I liked you. The minute I saw your first name, I was this guy's going to be ace.
Humiliating.
This isn't Torres. This is all streaming on
the internet. God. Okay, Jake. Oh, no. What are your thoughts on AOC? And is there a socialism resurface happening?
Definitely a great question. Definitely a resurfacing of socialism happening in progressive politics, which I think is really healthy. I think the Overton window is super far to the right, and I think we should be having discussions about that kind of stuff and a different approach to economics. I think AOC has one of the toughest jobs on the planet right now, because she is a woman in politics who's not worried about appeasing Fox News, and that is really tough because it means it has a huge target on your back. I will say, I think one thing that she's doing that's really fun to watch and it's like kind of fascinating is for years any politician who even mentions a semi-progressive idea gets slammed by Fox News for promising free college and free education and free everything. Like no matter what you say, even if it's like Obamacare, which is not free healthcare. Oh, you're promising government takeover of healthcare, and it's kind of fun to watch someone be like, "Yeah, I am promising those things, and those are good ideas." Because it's just a weird debate to watch. It's weird to like be so outside of the Overton window that Fox News' attacks, like when Fox puts her agenda on a screen as like a scare tactic thing, it kind of seems like a bunch of good ideas, like free healthcare, equal pay, like all that stuff seems nice. So it's fun to watch someone not try to appease the Fox News bad faith machine.
It's kind of funny to imagine her like seeing those segments on Fox, like, yeah,
hell yeah,
that kind of covers it.
Yeah, I think it's a cool approach to politics, and I wish that more politicians would realize that a lot of the conservative media ecosystem operates in bad faith and isn't interested in moderation, and so you should spend less time worrying about them.
Okay, John Fallett, speaking of lizard brains, is there such a thing as too much research? What's the cutoff point?
Great question.
I think that's possible.
We both grapple with this. I'm sure any Vox producer grapples with this. You want to know every single thing about an issue before you make a video about it and live in constant fear of missing something.
Yeah.
Especially for strike-through videos that are like very clip heavy. There's always an anxiety of like, there's going to be a perfect clip out there that I can find to show this thing. And I should just keep looking for it. The cutoff point is when your editor says you are 2 days late to your script deadline, and we will fire you if you don't get something in. Yeah. It's a good cutoff point.
That's a really good
fear of God is a good cutoff point. And then just having like Maddie is really good for this, and my editor Liz too is good for this. And just being like, your point's been proven. You don't need to show a whole bunch of these things. If you look at like the first draft of the strike-through episode, it's like 15 minutes long because it's like here's 100 clips to show this, and it's because I have a really hard time killing my babies when it comes to making this stuff. Like I think every clip is the most important thing in the world, and it's just helpful to have an outside eye being like, we don't need any of this stuff and cut it. So just have good collaborators.
Yeah, which is hard for. Yeah, I think that like I definitely tend to put too much info in most like scripts and early drafts, and then like it gets slashed out. And at first I think like, oh my God, the story's being ripped apart. It's too thin. But like when the dust kind of settles and you watch the edit flow, it usually ends up working out. And cutting down is a good thing. There's definitely a too much research, too much info possibility.
It's good that we have the impulse to be like, we want to be more thorough. And like Vox's, I think, approach to this stuff is over deliver, show you everything you need to know about this thing. But
I think there's also this pressure that's like, you want this to be the iconic flagship video on the internet of this topic.
Yeah.
And it sucks to leave stuff out.
Yeah. Like the Overton window video, there's so many examples of the Overton window that I could show. Or the Tucker video, so many examples about Tucker as a white nationalist. You want it to be like, no one can touch this. This is the ultimate thing, which is just too much pressure to put on an internet video when you're on a deadline. Like there's just too much pressure. So you need people who can like yank you out of it and soothe the part of you that is anxious about missing something and just say, good is good enough.
And I think the audience appreciates that more. We don't need a 30-minute documentary on every single topic on the channel.
So if you're the kind of person who's willing to watch that, we really appreciate you because you put a lot of work into those things.
Thanks. Heather Moore, how long does it take to make an episode from concept to posting?
Great question, Heather. Usually about 3 weeks. So I pitch, and then we spend a week working on the script and doing all the research and doing the interviews. Then we shoot, which takes and like create the shame draft of it, which takes about like a couple of days, and then another week to do all the edits, get all of the final approval, put it into YouTube, get thumbnails, get headlines, all that stuff. So 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks. When I started at Vox, it was closer to 2 weeks. And then I had to be like, I can't, it's too much, and beg my editors to let me slow down. So now it's about a 3 week schedule. I wish I could be making stuff that responds to stuff in the news cycle every single day, but there's just no way. It just takes time. Good things take time.
Yep. Rob Cronin, what are your go-to resources when researching? Do you have particular authors, schools, archives that you like to look through?
Great question, Rob. We use archive.org a lot, which is a website that just records a ton, for strike-throughs purposes, a ton of news coverage, both cable, like national and local, and then archives it by transcript, which makes it really easy to search and goes back forever. There's another service called Snapstream that keeps like the last couple of weeks together for cable news and then drops them off. I also use a ton of that for some videos that have a lot of historical archive, like when I did about Nixon and Trump. I had to like go to the Nixon library people and ask them for some stuff, or like go to YouTube and find some stuff that was hanging out. And then in terms of like academic things, I have like a lot of old debate friends who spent a lot more time reading critical theory stuff than I did when I was in debate. When I was a debater, all I cared about was politics and not about any of the theory. And I feel like an idiot because I'm constantly asking my friends who I used to make fun of for being philosophy nerds to be like, has anyone written about this thing? And they're all like, yes, here's all these academic texts. So I have a lot of debate friends who remind me of who wrote the argument they beat me on when I was a junior in high school, basically.
There's also a bunch of archives that are just operated by government websites. Like the NASA archive is hideous and hard to navigate, but they documented everything, and anything that the government made is usually like public domain, which means you can use it in any capacity you want. And especially like 50 years ago, a lot of the stuff they were making was like very stylish and cool and fun, like PSAs and ads and brochures and all kinds of stuff. So archive.org and like Library of Congress and any government website is going to have like an archive, and libraries. A lot of good stuff there. Alexis Thomas, sorry. Question for Coleman about Darkroom. How do you choose the pictures you talk about? Thanks for asking. So I went into like a long research hole, like trying to find the most obscure, like awesome photos that like solved a mystery or contain a mystery or something. And a lot of them were dead ends. A lot of searching through Getty, a lot through the Library of Congress archives. I reached out to librarians and then people at like the International Center for Photography, Library of Congress, and other archives and stuff, and just asked them, and professors of photography, and like asked them like, do they know a photo? Like, I described like what I wanted to do with Darkroom, which is to like take a photo that, given more context, like is indicative of a broader narrative, especially a history narrative, and like, do you know of any photos like that? So I got some help from people like that. Christoph loaned me a book of like the 100 like pictures that change photography or something. That's where I actually got the Scott photo, the very first episode, and then Time Magazine's 100 most influential photos. That's got good stuff. But I do want to try to stay away from iconic photos in general, just because it's usually been done before. I did the Hindenburg, but that's just a great story. So yeah, just kind of all over the place. And a lot of it, kind of like what Carlos was saying, is like asking for help. Like the quickest way to do research or find something is to ask someone whose job it's been for 25 years to know every single thing about it. Or you could just troll Getty for hours like I did and find nothing.
It's also really cool as someone who knew Coleman before Darkroom and watched it now. It's like such a perfect encapsulation of like the stuff that makes Coleman Coleman, like a history nerd caring about old timey stuff and like being able to go really in depth in photography, and like everything about the aesthetics of Darkroom is just like extremely Coleman. So it's fun to watch as someone who used to work with him and be like, make all of my shit and see how different it is from what he was doing when he was doing Strikethrough. It's like you're getting. I'm just really glad that you have the series because it's like really, really good. It's like a good manifestation of the stuff that makes Coleman great.
That's really sweet.
You'd be stuck making Strikethrough for the rest of your life, but you branched out. The bird left the nest.
Wow.
I'm proud of you.
Michael Puckett, if you had more time and more money, what would the feature-length documentary edition of Strikethrough be about?
Man, great question, Michael.
That's something you should think about.
I think about it all the time. It keeps me up at night. So there's two versions of it that I would do right now in my head. One is I want to basically tackle one of the questions that was asked earlier was like how to deal with the accusations of bias, and the whole idea of like objectivity in media and bias being like a danger in journalism. It's like a very kind of recent American idea, and I think it's profoundly bad for us as citizens. And this obsession with neutrality and objectivity has like made us really worse for the wear and made the whole country really stupid and made all of our news networks really stupid. Like CNN is the perfect embodiment of like what morons it makes you when you don't have any editorial judgment at all. Facebook is also a great example of what happens when there's just like no one at the wheel making editorial calls. So I want to do a more full like explanation of like why bias is good, a defense of bias. A defense of journalism is like propaganda for liberal democracy. I want to do. The other version of it is like I'm fascinated by genocidal propaganda, like the stuff that we say that convinces us to mistreat other human beings, to me is fascinating. Like Nazi propaganda, propaganda in Rwanda, and then like anti-immigrant stuff. It all looks so similar, and it's fascinating that humans can be convinced to be so awful. And so I'd want to spend like 2 hours walking through like what is the actual process of turning everyday typical human beings into the kind of monsters who can watch a kid be put in a prison camp on the border and be like, that doesn't freak me out at all. I think it's fascinating, and it has something to do with media, but also it's just like propaganda in general and how human psychology works. That I would like love to talk about that for 2 hours and just like show a bunch of really cool archive and stuff like that.
The subjectivity thing in journalism you talk about a lot, like for as long as I've known you, and I think that's so interesting because it's so counterintuitive when you first hear it. Like that sounds like, you know, a bad thing, subjectivity, but the lack of subjectivity or the kind of the guise of objectivity has allowed us to like politely slide into like mayhem. Like, this is okay. Yeah, you think shootings are false flags. We'll have you on, I guess.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's never stop debating anything because everything's open for debate. Yeah.
Right.
It makes us idiots. I'm glad that I'm slowly radicalizing you on that.
You are. You've radicalized me on a couple of things.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. But the subjectivity thing is interesting because was there a time that you think the news had more of a moral objective or a code where like an old like the old guard anchors would come on and be like, this is inexcusable?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this a little bit in the Nixon video about like how Cronkite used to be like, this is a major issue, like stuff is going down and like this is a real problem, which wasn't really about the neutrality thing. It was more about like there are just less outlets, and so we have one agreed upon story about it. But like if you look at British journalism, it's like everyone's like, these people are monsters, we should destroy them, like union papers, like it's a normal part of storytelling. And I obviously think that some bias and subjectivity can be really dangerous, and like we go after Fox News all the time, which is, you know, doesn't give a crap about objectivity, and so it can obviously go off the rails. But I kind of think that stuff's inevitable, and the response to people like Fox News is having like really good persuasive counter propaganda that's like, this is bullshit. These people are monsters. This is not what the country's about. And that there's a real role for journalism to be making that case. And if you look at like every movie we've ever made about like great journalists in American history, they're not the ones who are fair and balanced. They're the ones who are like, this is corrupt. I'm going to expose this shit. These people are monsters. That's great. It's also subjective. It's like, it's very editorial. It's not neutral at all. And you shouldn't be neutral about like the Catholic child abuse scandal. Like you should have a very strong point of view about that. And anyone who's like, both sides, let's just hear it out, is a friggin' monster. You should trust that person. That's not a trustworthy journalist. Some things are evil.
Do you think that the format of news affected that? Like at the end of the 6 o'clock news hour and, you know, kind of one or two channel options, like created an environment of like sensationalism?
Yeah, I use to fill a ton of airtime right now because if you're CNN, you have to fill like 20 hours a day of news stuff. And the easiest way to do that is have a bunch of idiots on a panel, a 9-person panel to scream about whatever happened in the news that day. It's really cheap and it's really easy. And also people like watching people fight. So people will watch it, but it makes us all total idiots. It's more expensive to research and make a good argument, which is why Strikethrough is once every 3 weeks. And CNN has another 9-person panel on every single night.
Yeah. Sebastian, was it harder to see how I said that all travel abroad?
You studied abroad in Mexico for a year.
Baby, I know how to say stuff. Was it harder to make the Antifa video considering the more left-leaning premise? And was it what you guys expected?
Great question. Yes, making the Antifa video was very difficult. I agonized over it a lot. When I was making it, my story editor at the time was Mona, who's now our EP, who was also like deeply concerned with me making that argument. And it's one of the videos I've gotten the most negative reaction for by far. It's also the video that I most frequently get tweeted about or messages in my Facebook DMs being like, you're a monster, you love Antifa people, which is why we just started to make jokes about it in scripts, like calling myself an Antifa super soldier. I will say I have rewatched that video many times since publishing it because of all the negative feedback I've gotten. To this day, that argument was right. I was 100% correct. That was dope. I'm glad I made it. I was right. I will say
made a big splash.
Made a big splash.
Still, if you search Vox on YouTube, one of the like borders will come up, but like Antifa will be one of those suggested.
Yeah, I'm glad I made it. That argument was good. I will say I did not expect the backlash to be as aggressive as it was because it was my first time getting like, you know, the Steven Crowder people really reacting to me, and
I hate that guy.
I was surprised by
I hate
the.
that game.
It's okay. It's okay. I was surprised by the volume of negative feedback. Looking back at my argument, because people were so convinced that I was like defending Antifa and making a case for like smashing Starbucks windows, I like rewatched it to be like, did I say that? Like, did I seem friendly to the tactics of Antifa? And I wasn't. So I have anxiety about like having worded myself incorrectly. I don't think that's the case that happened here. I think, when you make a controversial argument, especially videos like the Antifa video or the terrorism video, where I'm trying to be like, look at this scary thing, don't be scared by it. You're kind of fighting a losing battle. What's up, Joe?
Hey.
This is Joe.
Sorry, I interrupted.
Speaking of Antifa,
the founder of Vox
Joe.
Video here.
Oh, are we? Yeah, the real Antifa super soldier.
Yeah, you're the one.
I'm sorry to interrupt you guys.
It's
I
all
just
right.
wanted to say thanks for doing this.
No problem. Thanks for letting us do it.
Whoa, this is crazy.
I
I'm
know,
seeing
right?
into the Matrix right now.
Yeah,
Oh my
all
God.
y'all's questions is on a screen right here,
Really
and we're watching
screwing
ourselves
up
on a
the production
2-second
value.
lag.
Yeah.
Right now.
It's weird.
Joe, do you want to ask a question for Carlos?
Yeah. So
No,
question.
something from the brain, from the heart.
What do
I'll
you
finish answering the Antifa question in a second.
Oh. What video that you made did you feel most nervous about publishing?
Tucker Carlson being a white nationalist is the most scared I've ever been making a video.
That's one of your
Yeah.
best. By
And
far.
like the Antifa video, do you feel any sort of regrets?
Yes.
Really?
I should have said to camera, he's a white nationalist, we should get him off the air. Back then I was like, white nationalists like him. And now having watched him longer, I'm like, no, he's like absolutely one of them. I think the last lines of that video was like, doesn't actually matter if he's a white supremacist. All that matters is that people who are white supremacists like him. And looking like at having seen everything that's happened since then, I'm like, no, he's totally one of them. I think he's a white nationalist. So, but I mean, back then I couldn't have made that argument. I didn't have enough evidence for it, but
it was
I was
dicey already.
I was
Your
terrified.
David Duke comparisons already.
I was so late to that script because I like could not sleep. I was so nervous about making that argument correctly.
That is
And-
absolutely true.
Yeah, and I'm glad that I took the time because I feel like it nailed it, and I was right before people were saying it, and I'm really proud of it. But I was terrified.
Yeah,
So
your
scared.
former colleagues found a lot of interesting evidence since then.
Yeah, Media Matters has found much of stuff about him now, but yeah, I was terrified. I didn't sleep for like 2 weeks.
I'm really sorry, I didn't know that.
It's okay. I pitched that video because I
Give
knew
this
it
man a
was,
vacation,
I'm
Joe.
really sorry.
I pitched it because I knew it was going to be a tough argument to make, and I wanted to make a tough argument.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I did it. But yeah, it was.
I should
exhausting.
stop butting in on these. I just wanted to say hi. Good
No
job.
problem.
Thanks,
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you
Have
for
a good
doing
night.
this. I'll see
No
you.
problem.
See you. I'm gonna go back to watching it.
Okay. So the other thing I'll say about the Antifa video,
Now that he's gone, that guy's crazy.
God. The one thing that I do regret about it is that the guy that we interviewed for that video, I forget it, I think his name was Doug, about like how movements get smeared by like the most radical members of it, is so nice and so smart and so well researched, and he was like so generous with his time. And the argument he makes about social movements getting derailed by bad actors is like not about Antifa. He studies a bunch of social movements, and that argument is so important. And when I did the interview, I told him like I'm going to be talking about Antifa, so he wasn't blindsided by it. But I am frustrated that so many people tuned out of the video because they freaked out about the Antifa thing and didn't take the core argument, which is like bad actors get the most attention and then delegitimize real social movements, seriously. And so he ended up liking the video. The guy we interviewed, he sent me an email afterward being like, great job. But it sucks that he's such a good dude and that he probably got some flack for the negative feedback that I got. And like his argument is so tight. That argument in general is like so good and important. And it sucks that so many people heard Antifa and then shut down. But also,
I had a hard time in that video.
Yeah.
I had a hard time wrapping my head around that one.
Yeah.
Even after we shot it. It's that's definitely your boldest claim. More than Tucker, I think.
Yeah. And also 100% right. If anyone wants to argue with me about this, I will fight you.
Oh, and it's the humility that the people stick around for.
Really struck through that one.
Oh, come on.
Sorry.
Matt says, are there any strike-through video ideas that you've pitched in the past and haven't yet taken shape, but you want to revisit in the future? I
Yes.
think a lot changed after Trump got elected. I mean, we got the job after Trump got elected.
Oh, yeah.
But we were pitching, or Carlos was pitching this series to Vox for months in 2016. And the idea was that we were going to be in a Clinton administration. So it was a very different approach.
I fully pitched strike-through thinking, before it was called strike-through thinking, it was going to be in a Clinton White House just because of the polling. And so the videos I was pitching back then were like, why Democrats are too nervous about nuclear energy. Like, just different stuff. Very different.
Can't you see it doesn't matter?
So the whole series changed after Trump got elected. And yeah, there are tons of videos that I pitch now that don't get greenlit because they don't have good visuals yet, or because I'm not really sure of what the argument is yet. And Liz tells me to like go think about it more, or because the idea is just too big for a video. Like that genocidal propaganda video is one that I pitched a lot, and it's just like too big right now. So I need to find a way to make it smaller. So yeah, there's a ton of them that they're just sitting in an Excel document that might never ever see the light of day, but it means I'll never run out of things to say.
Unfortunately. So you will have to stop though, because we have 10 minutes left.
Oh shit.
9.5.
Rapid fire.
The interviews. How do you find folk? And then how do you ask?
I look through a lot of scholarly writing, and if there's any expert who seems to have done a lot of research about the thing I want to write about, or has interviews online where they've talked about it, I'll email them and ask to talk for a few minutes on the phone. If they sound good on the phone and seem like they're knowledgeable, I will ask them to do an hour-long Skype interview that I'll record on my end, or if they're in New York or DC, I'll ask them to come into the studio and record it. But it's usually finding really good research first and being like, I bet they could talk about this.
People usually are very receptive to being interviewed. Also,
yeah.
Especially in academia, they like to talk. They do it really well because it's their job to communicate this stuff to people. So yeah, usually people are pretty receptive to that.
Also, it was way tougher getting interviews when I started Strikethrough, and everyone was like, who the hell are you? And now people are like, oh, I know who you are. I'll talk to you. So it's gotten a lot easier over time.
TJ Cooney wants to know, what is your favorite kind of beer? And Carlos doesn't drink.
I do not drink, but when I did drink, my favorite beer was
Mojito.
Nope, not a beer. Then racist. It was Coronas, not a lot better. Coronas or Blue Moons. I like things that taste like oranges,
oh my god,
citrus.
Wow.
All right,
it's kind of fruity, don't you think? Next question.
Coleman's a homophobe. Everyone should know that about him.
I'm gonna go to the doc, I guess.
Go to the doc.
What is your actually? I'm gonna go off the dome. What is your favorite type of D&D character? Like which class?
Oh my god, great question, Coleman. If I was gonna play, I'd either play a bard or a cleric. I like support characters who heal and help others, so I would just be a support person. It's because gay people like to play supports.
Stop looking at me.
Everybody knows that. What else you got in the old dome? Aries?
No. Advice for aspiring Carloses and Colemans.
Good question, Miguel.
If you're a Coleman, find you a Carlos.
Yep. Hitch your wagon to a star like me, baby. No, I would say advice is don't go to J school. It's a huge waste of money. Neither of us went to J school.
Music school.
Yeah.
Also a huge waste of money.
Gender studies school. Just not helpful at all. I would say develop a specific beat that you are really good at. So like the only reason I have anyone who follows me on Twitter is because I only tweeted about media stuff for a long time, so people could rely on it from me. And don't just do hot takes. Have thoughtful things that require thought, because there are a million assholes on the internet who just have a hot take about something, and there's too many assholes in the world. That people need people who are like thoughtful and smart and have a program that they can something they can really offer to a newsroom.
And if you want to do producing stuff, I think just start shooting, get a cheap camera kit. There's a lot of used stuff, and just make stuff and make stuff and make stuff and make stuff and meet people and show it to them. And I know that's shitty advice and it's really annoying to hear, but you eventually will get somewhere and someone's attention. You just have to make it first, because no one's really going to give you a gig without something to back it up. I don't know if that helps. Johnny's kind of said something similar in the Q&A, I hope. So what do you think of hardcore moderates like Smeet?
I don't know, it depends what you're moderate about, but I would say that being a moderate is not an ideology or a political position. It's just a space on the spectrum. So if the spectrum was really far that way, you're still a moderate, something has gone awry. Being a moderate is not in itself something to aspire to. Being good and advocating for good public policy is. So if it happens to be in the middle, then that's fine. But sometimes one party is right and the other one is wrong about something. And being a moderate just to be nice is not a good idea. Sorry.
Don't be a coward.
There's no room for moderates anymore. This is war.
Okay, are we gonna wrap it up and say goodbye now? Or there's a case?
We have 5 minutes left.
Yeah, just free form.
Is any question that we missed in the chat?
Interpretive dance.
I hate you. Wow. That's next.
Oh no, I
That's not very moderate of you.
Oh, wait, what am I supposed to ask?
What do you want to know?
Are there any questions that is there anything that I'm doing in Strikethrough that really annoys you or that you hate? I've already regret asking this question, but if there's anything that I'm doing that's really obnoxious, let me know.
Too many hands.
There's a lot of hand
It's a lot
movements.
of the hands.
I'm Cuban and gay. This is like where I store all of my energy. It's up here and trying to make it interesting. Also, when we shoot, it's like constant cuts. So to me, it doesn't feel like this. It feels like I'm saying this line. Okay, what's the next line? Got it. This line. So it just ends up looking like I'm way more frantic than I actually am. Other questions to ask. I don't know. Thanks for watching, guys. Sorry if it's they're really nerdy and depressing all the time, but I promise I'm on the inside. I'm a much cheerier person.
No, you're not. Why are you lying to the camera right now? Are you kidding me? This guy goes home and eats canned beans cold.
Oh, shut up.
Half of
Someone asked if wow. Someone asked if the off-camera lines are improvised or written, and I'll have you know they are all pre-written by me. And I tell Coleman to say all this crazy shit to me, and he's like, "What?" When we did the handy video, I was like, "We need a football. You need to throw a football at me over and over and over again." And we spent like 20 minutes with you throwing a football at me.
Yeah, I get really sensitive about my takes. Even though it's off camera, I want to do it like 8 times.
He's nervous about his voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all that stuff is
sometimes a random one goes in there.
Yeah, sometimes some asides work. Like me breaking and laughing, which you started to incorporate more, is all real. Like I really do break a lot in these things because we're just working each other up into a frenzy in those studios and acting like idiots.
Yeah.
He looks so serious while I'm saying that.
Oh.
Isn't making Strikey with me fun?
Yeah, it's fun. What do you like to do outside of work?
Great question, Jasmine. I play D&D. I run.
You just said earlier you don't play D&D.
I DM a D&D campaign. I play a lot of video games. I hang out with Coleman and watch buying compilations until like 2 o'clock in the morning.
It's the only thing to do with that.
And laugh like an idiot. I go to the gym, worry about my next Strikethrough video. It's a lot of dread.
We're at work a lot, honestly.
we're at work a lot.
I'm gonna skip that.
Bill Maher, John Oliver, Stephen Colbert, or Conan. Not Bill Maher.
Yeah.
Not Bill Maher. The other 3 are fine. I like John Oliver a lot. Colbert is great. We use him a lot in the video about satire. And Conan's great, though. I don't watch a lot of Conan, but he seems funny.
I think it would go in a battle royale situation. Bill Maher would.
You're thinking violence?
Well, the question is very open-ended. It's just 4 names. Yeah. And I'm kind of going to say Maher here, actually.
You're thinking Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Maher might actually win.
I could just see him fighting dirty.
Conan's very tall.
Skinny, though.
Huh?
Thin.
Huh?
He's thin.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it'd be harder to see him or hit him with an arrow if projectile weapons are allowed.
Everyone's logged off at this
Let's
point.
see. We got time for one more.
Let's see.
I think the football's.
How far left are you? Like a spiritual anarchist? Yeah, I don't know what that means. If that's a D&D class, I would happily play it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why the football all the time? Is that a Hannity reference? Is that a masculinity?
Yeah, because Hannity throws it.
I know.
Yeah, I just think it's funny that I think it's like such a ridiculous caricature of what a straight man thinks they're supposed to act like. And also like
Hannity is a smaller football that he throws. It looks like a little like toy one, basically.
It's just I think it's like such a hilariously campy, almost draggy version of how a man's supposed to act that he throws a football off camera. Like,
it's hilarious.
Who is watching at home like, oh my stars, what a man he is. It's just so stupid. And so I just thought we should make it a recurring bit. And every time I talk about Hannity, it's just to point out that he's a total joke. Also, he just wants anyone who wants that badly to be seen as a tough guy, their biggest weakness is someone making fun of them for being a tough guy. And so we should just make fun of Hannity for that all the time.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining and watching
the lab. And I hope we're doing good enough for you.
Well said. You did go to music school.
It's been a long day.
Thanks for watching. Seriously, it means a lot to us. Thanks for liking Strikethrough. I know the comment sections are always a friggin' dumpster fire, but we do see the really nice ones and the thoughtful ones, and it means a lot to us.
And we read them all.
Yeah, and we work really hard on them. And so even if there's an argument that you don't like, just know that we're making it in good faith and trying our best, and that we appreciate you like taking the time to listen to us and take it seriously, especially when the videos are like 9 minutes long. So thanks a lot. Bye, guys.
Bye,
See you
guys.
soon.